What I'm actually going to show you is a step beyond that, which is actually importing a sprite sheet into your project and then setting it up properly. So I'm going to go ahead. Obviously, you can, you've probably come across making sprite sheets before. You can absolutely make your own just for the sake of expediency and being lazy. I'm just going to go ahead and import one that I've downloaded from spritesresource.com, which is always a good place for you to go and find just free sprite sheets to use. Okay, so I am going to go ahead and import this sprite sheet that I downloaded. So I was looking for a set of dog sprites and animations that were a little bit more simple than this, but we've got quite a few here, but that's not a problem. The main thing I want to show you right here is importing this sprite sheet into Unity and making sure that we have all the right settings. So very important. So, in the, so I've imported it into my sprites folder. I'm going to select it, and then you'll see by default, it basically wants to process it as just one giant image. It doesn't want to recognize that actually this is a sprite sheet. It's made up of lots of different sprites, each making up different animation states. So we need to tell it that basically. So by clicking on the file in the project view, we can take a look in the inspector, and some of these settings are right by default. So like it is a sprite 2D and UI, that's fine. The thing that's wrong that we need to change is this sprite mode. So instead of single, we need to change this to multiple. So what we're telling this is that, oh, there isn't just one sprite on this particular image file, there's actually multiple sprites. And then we need to click apply as a first step, and then go into the sprite editor to give it more details of, okay, so there are multiple sprites, but how should the project understand like how many sprites there are, where they go, etc., etc. So if I click on sprite editor, it'll open up this sprite editor window. This sprite sheet, as we can see, looks a little bit like this. As I said, I was looking for something more simple, but this has got more animations than I want to use in the beginning, but that's fine. The main thing is that we need to tell Unity, tell this sprite editor specifically, that it needs to split this sprite sheet up into however many images are here. So it's 4 columns by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 rows. So what we want to do in here is click on the little arrow that's next to, it's just an arrow by itself. It's not the one that's on sprite editor. It's this little arrow down here. And you can see that it, so by default, it might automatically detect how many there are. More likely than not, we're going to have to tell it. So I tried importing this before just to test it, so it's still got my settings. But this is, so we can say that, oh, it's got 4 columns by 9 rows. So I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, that's all fine. We can also do it by cell size. If we know how big the individual cells in this sprite sheet are, we can tell it to do that instead. But in this case, we're just going to go with cell count. So 4 by 9, all of this looks good. We're going to keep the pivot point of the image at the center, which means that 0, 0 on the image is at the center of the image rather than at the corner of the image or top right of the image or whatever. And then that's it. And then I'm going to press slice. And that has worked. So the reason I know it's worked is because we can see that it has sliced up the image into these individual cells. So now I can go ahead and press apply. And you'll see as I did that, something really cool happened, which is that this one big sprite sheet broke down into all of these different individual animation states. So that's pretty cool. So now what we have is information on this one sprite sheet that's been imported into Unity on all of the different cells in the sprite sheet, but that hasn't yet converted them into individual animation states. So that's what we're going to do next. So I'm just going to look at the sprite sheet and try and figure out what I want to use as like my default idle animation for this dog. who looks a little bit, but not that much like my dog Roscoe. Actually, I guess he does. That does look like Roscoe. Okay. Oh, actually, yeah. So this one just seems like it's like a sit type animation, but maybe that will work okay for an idle. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to find these 4 images over here. So what I can do is actually just go through and say, oh, these 4 images are for an animation for walking down. These 4 are, and all I'm doing here is just like shift selecting these and going through with the arrow keys. These 4 seem to be walking to the right. These 4 seem to be walking, I'm going to close this again because that's in the way, walking up. These 4 seem to be walking left. And then these are the ones that I'm going to use for my test for some kind of idle animation. So I'm going to make sure these 4 are selected, and I'm going to go ahead and just drag these into either the scene directly, and we can see that we probably need to scale up the sprite quite a bit once it gets in there because it's tiny. So I'm just going to put it into the scene, and then what it'll do by default is pop up a window which asks me to save this this group of 4 images as an animation state. So I'm gonna create a subfolder in my sprites folder called animations, and I'm gonna put all my animations in here. So I've created a folder called animations, and then I'm gonna call this idle.anim. This is gonna be my idle animation. And then what we can see has happened here is that well, a few things have happened. So we dragged this in here. It created a game object with usual transform, also a sprite renderer because we need to be able to see whatever sprite is it's currently on. But then it's also got another animation called the animator. Another component called the animator. And this animator has a bunch of properties on it, which we'll go into in a second. But first, I'm going to just scale up this this thing here. Okay, that did not scale up. That's like a really blurry image, but it's fine. We're just using this for illustrative purposes. Okay, so scaled this up, and I'm also going to just make sure that order in layer is 20. And you know what? Because I'm going to replace this, I'm actually going to just delete this Roscoe the dog object here, and I'm going to apply my script instead to this this new version of the dog image that I want to use. So I'm going to say, I'm going to rename this to Roscoe the dog, and then I'm going to I can either click on add component to find my dog movement script, and if it's not already selected, you might have to click on it to find it. So I can either do it this way, or I can go into my scripts folder and find it in here and then just drag it onto the game object. So what this will do, and in fact what I'll do is just play this just to show you what's happening by default before I've done anything else. So it's started animating, it started looping through the 4 different states that made up this particular animation. And we'll go into that in a second. But then also, if I press the arrow keys left and right, it is moving, see? Because we've applied that dog movement script. Cool, so that is a good start. What I'm going to do next is go into the this property here, which is the animation controller. So what is this? So this one, if I click on this Spritesheets dog 16, which is the reason it was named that is because that was the first state in that particular animation that I selected. So we can rename all those. That's completely fine. I'm going to in fact, I'm going to rename this right now, just so it's not confusing. So I'm going to rename this to dog anim controller. And then I'm going to just click on here and make sure that name applied here. Yes, that's all good. I'm just going to press play to test that everything still works normally and the renaming of it didn't mess anything up. Nope, all good. And actually, this is kind of cool. So if I'm going to stop playing again for a second. So if I click on this animation controller, this window pops up, which is the animator. Okay, so if we just try to press play one more time. Okay, this is what I wanted. So if we have the animation control, the animator up here, we can see that it's playing the idle state. It's looping through the different states in the idle state. So what we can do is actually change this speed for one thing. So if we want to slow it down, we can do it right here. There's a few places we can do it, but yeah, we can do it right here. So this is like about, you know, a fifth of the speed or a quarter of the speed as of normal. So that's one thing we can do. But one of the things we'll see, so over here, this is sort of a visual representation of what is happening in this animation controller. So this entry box here, this green box that says entry, and I'm going to actually just move all these a little bit so we can see better. Okay, I guess it doesn't want to let me do that while it's playing, which is fair, I guess. So there we go. I'm going to move this so we can see. So this entry state has a link to the idle state. So basically what this is saying is, okay, as soon as we enter, as soon as the animation controller starts, we want to go into the idle animation, and that's it. Cool. So that's fairly straightforward. So there's just this one animation here. If we want to use the other animations, which I guess we probably do, if we want to move to the, you know, to the left and the right and up and down. So what I'm going to do is just create animation states out of some of the other sprites that we have in this sprite sheet. Okay, so now I'm going to select these next 4 frames in the animation. So again, the annoying thing, we're going to have to repeat the process that we did before to create a new animation from these first 4 sprites, which are sort of a walk down. So if we look at that, there we go. So there's like a walking down. So I'm gonna, yeah, just for setting this up quickly, what I'm gonna do is select these 4 sprites, make sure they're selected, drag them into the scene, and then it's gonna ask me, oh hey, you wanna save another animation? And I'm gonna be like, yes, I do. It's going to be called walk down. But then all I actually want is this walk down file that's been generated from this whole process. What I don't want is a whole other object, which is a copy of, you can see it's actually right here, see? It's actually yet another copy of the same game object, effectively, with it's just, yeah, just basically a clone of this dog, which we don't want. We want this just that one animation state, and it's created a whole other controller, so we can also delete that. We only want we want to have one animation controller, basically. So what I do want though, so yeah, I'm going to delete this game object as well, so as not to confuse things. So what we do want is, if I go back to the dog animation controller that I saved earlier, that I started working on earlier, there is just the one idle animation right now. I'm going to drag in this walk down animation, and we can see it's been added as a grayed out box. The reason it's grayed out is because we don't have a way to sort of get to it from the animation flow. That's not something to worry about too much right now. I'm just going to go ahead and repeat the process and add all the animations I might need. So basically I just want idle, walk down, walk up, walk left, walk right. So let me find this. So this one looks like it's probably a walk right. So I'm going to just repeat that process another time. And so if I drag it into here, I'm going to be like, yes, I want to save the animation, but lose everything else. So I'm going to say, this is walk right. And then I'm going to delete the animation controller that was created from that, because I don't want that. And I also don't want the game object that's been generated. What I do want is, if I go back to the animation controller that I'm actually using, why is it not letting me look around? There it is. Okay, I can see the whole thing. Why isn't this letting me pan around here? Hold on, I'm gonna select one of these nodes. There we go. So a good trick actually in Unity is, if you're lost somewhere in a scene or in the animator, select an object that you want to focus in on and press the F key on the keyboard, which I guess is like F for find. I've never quite figured it out, but that's how I think of it. It's F for find, and it helps you just find and zoom into that one item. So this has helped me reset this view right here. Okay, so we've got this walk right state. I'm just going to go ahead and repeat that process again for like all the other states that I want. So I've got to walk right, got to walk up. So I'm going to put that in here. Yeah, walk up. Okay. And over here, so this is selected the animation controller that it's just created specifically for walk up. We don't want that. We want the walk up animation state to go in our existing animation controller. So I'm going to delete that, delete this, and open our actual animation controller that we want to use. Oh, you know what? Okay. This is why it's being weird. I don't know why it's doing that. So there was a node that was like out of place. So the exit node was like way over there on mine for some reason. That's why it was doing this weird zoom out. So I'm going to go ahead and do walk, what was I adding? Walk up. And then finally, I'm going to create the animation states for walk left. Which is where it's over here. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. These look like they are walk left. So I'm going to once more drag these in, doing this just to get the animation state out of it. Not that I want all the other things that also go along with it. So I'm going to delete the animation controller that's been created specifically just to house this one walk left animation, which makes no sense. So I'm going to delete that, delete the duplicate object, and open my dog animation controller for one more time and put the walk left animation in here. So this is good because what this means is we have access to all of these different animation states. So I'm going to go ahead and just show you how we're going to use them. So there's lots more we can do with this. I'm not going to get into that right now. What I will show you is, because what we want to do is, as we are pressing these different directions, what we want to do is this playing? What's going on? Is the idle not playing? That's very strange. Okay. Well, I will investigate that shortly. I'm going to reset the... Oh, you know what? It's because, for some reason, this got lost. It's very strange. Okay, I'm going to just re-add this here. Okay, make sure everything else has all its requisite animation states associated with it. Okay, let's just try that again. So idle, I'm going to set the idle speed to 0.5 and play. There we go. Okay, cool. Wait, that's not the idle state. This is very confusing. What's going on? Just a second. I'm going to fix this. Okay, so now if I go ahead and press play. We should see this idle animation working. Cool. So what I want to do is, as I'm pressing the different arrow keys, I want to change to some of these other animation states. I don't want to stay in idle. So let's go ahead and do that. So if I click on this game object again, if I go into dog movement, so I'm going to do all of my code that I need in here. So this is our script from before to move the dog around the screen. What I'm going to do is add some code to play the appropriate animation when that key is being pressed. So here is so this is another thing to note actually, because this input.get key, this is processing. So anything in here will be processed the whole time the key is being pressed. So let's just, I'm going to show you what happens if I put my animation play code in here. Okay, so what I'm going to try and do is put, I'll show you what happens if I try to put my animation code in here. So by default, remember, we are just playing the idle animation. So if we're pressing the right arrow, what we would want to do, just in order to play an animation in general, right? This isn't just to play it when we're pressing a key. We need to get the animator component, right? So remember, we want to just basically be able to access this this component, and we want to access the controller property on this animator. So and then from there we want to be able to access some of the things that the animator does, like let us play some of the animations that are on it. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to say get component animator. Oops. And then I'm going to do dot. And then actually, yeah, I can just use this function called play, which lets me play, and it wants the name in here, this play function. And we can look up the documentation for this, or if, as you notice, as I started typing it, it tells us what it's looking for. So it's looking for the name of the animation state to play. So I believe it was called walk_right is the one that we want. So walk right, yes, that's the one. I'm gonna go ahead and see how that is working out. Okay, and that actually seems to be, but the thing to note though is it starts playing the animation and then it doesn't stop, right? So that we need to handle that. So now it's just stuck in this state. So let's go ahead and put the other animations in first. So I'm going to say in here, let's say same code here. So get component animator, and as we're playing the left, pressing the left arrow, let's play the walk left animation. As we're doing this, pressing the down arrow, I'm going to do walk down, and then finally for pressing the up arrow, we want to do walk up. Okay, so now I've done that. So what we haven't done at any point is return to the idle state, right? So we'll see what happens here. So this still isn't going to look right, I'll just warn you. So by default, animation state, if I press left, it starts playing the walk left animation. If I press down, it starts playing the walk down animation. Up, walk up, and then this is right. However, it doesn't ever go back to idle. So let's put in a bit of code to do that. So basically, if we're not pressing any key, what should we be doing? We should be playing the idle animation. So I'm going to say else. We're going to put get component animator play and then idle. So if we're not pressing any key at all, we want to make sure we're just doing the idle animation. Cool. Okay, there we go. So obviously, you know, we could have like idle animations for when the dog is facing left, but when it's facing right, up and down and so forth. Instead, you know, I guess it will just sit down and face the front again. But, you know, maybe that's like a regular dog. So this is working, and as we can see, actually, the cool thing is as we're pressing the different keys, we can see, if we're looking over here at the animation controller, we can see what's being played at any given time. So that is a basic introduction to using sprites and the animation controller, creating different animation states from a sprite sheet, and then actually just writing the most basic way to just play an animation according to different key presses.